Democrats have lost their spine and they've lost their will to fight. And save for a select few on the messaging front, very few are getting it right. And leadership doesn't seem all that determined to fix anything. I'm your host, Ian West, and this is The Electorate. On today's episode, we are going to talk about sort of the pandemic that is taking over the Democratic Party, and that is the pandemic of sort of spineless response and reaction time. So outside of a few individuals in the Democratic Party, AOC, Chris Murphy, Andy Kim, and a few others are getting a little bit better at it. Response to the things that Donald Trump and Elon Musk have been doing have been very lukewarm at best, and oftentimes they've been very counterproductive for the Democratic Party and a little bit too cordial with Republicans who are doing whatever they can to make Democrats' lives more difficult. You've got Chuck Schumer right now on the front lines when the cutting funding at the USAID office was going on, leading chants about how, we will fight, we won't back down. And that's something that just doesn't work in this day and age. And it fell very flat and came across very, very poorly. You've also got Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader, and he is sort of signaling, at least recently, that he's not going to put up much of a fight when it comes to the budget. He's out there appearing on podcasts basically saying, hey, we don't have any of the branches of government. There's nothing that we can be doing. And of course, if one party controls the White House, Congress, and Senate, there's nothing there's nothing you can really do to stop legislation if it's going to pass regardless. But you've got to make Republicans' lives more difficult. You still have to put up a fight. You still have to show what you're against and what you're for. Because while this isn't the 2026 election right now, it's election season every year, all the time. We have to have our messaging correct year round, every year, whether there's an election coming up that year or not. And that's one thing that Democrats have really failed on in the past, is thinking that all you have to do is campaign for the 6 months before an election and maybe a couple days after an election if there's a close count or something that you've got to try to get over the line. But that's not the way the world works anymore. With social media, people are constantly plugged in, and they are constant. And even if they're not looking for political news, they might come across it by accident. And you have to show that what you're doing as a party is what the American people want. If you poll the American people, most of them might say that they like the idea of Doge, but they do not appreciate the way that Doge is going about its business. No one elected Elon Musk, and that's a relatively simple message, but it doesn't quite do the fight justice. So we just recently elected DNC Chair, and that's Ken Martin, and we put out at the electorate, we put out an endorsement of Ben Wickler. And if you go back and you look at that race and you see, the positions and what they wanted to do within the party, there was not a lot of daylight between the two. Ken and Ben were very similar. But you look at Ben Wickler, and he was energetic. He was big. He was a personality. He was outgoing. His messaging was strong and it was firm. You look at Ken Martin and, no offense to him, but it just comes off a little goofy sometimes. And I'm going to play a clip for you right now. Ken talking about some of the things that Elon and Trump are doing and responding to it. And this appeared on Midas Touch, and you can kind of tell me your thoughts.
It's been 3 weeks, and Elon Musk has already shown that he's the worst president that the U.S. has ever had. And so, in all honesty, this is the guy that was put in charge to bring efficiency to our government. The last thing he cares about is actually helping improve people's lives. Him and Donald Trump, basically, you have this government now that's been bought by the billionaires. The billionaires have one thing in mind, which is to make the most amount of profit they can off the backs of hardworking men and women in this country. I don't know how in the hell changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America is going to help anyone in this country.
So that's basically what I'm talking about right there. Okay, there's nothing wrong with what Ken said. I agree with most of it. Yeah, it kind of sounds like typical sort of laid back Democrat messaging, nothing too strong, okay for a DNC chair to say, but the delivery was lackluster. And he felt just kind of not weak, but just not as strong as I think he could have been, and not as strong as the messaging would have been had it come from Ben Wickler. And I think that that's, it's not permeating down the party because, Ken's only been in here for since February 1st. That's when he was elected. But I don't watch that video or watch Ken speak and then watch Hakeem Jeffries and watch Chuck Schumer and Maxine Waters and some of these others and say, and Jerry Connolly as well, and say, okay, it looks like this issue might get fixed, right? It looks like Ken Martin might be able to drive better, stronger, faster messaging. I'm just not getting that sense. And we talked about it before. We're not gonna belabor this point too much because there's no use in it anymore. This happened a long time ago. But Jerry Connolly beating out AOC for House Oversight was a big fucking mistake because these are real problems that we're having right now, where somebody needs to be on the horn every single day, messaging against what Elon Musk and Donald Trump are doing, making their lives difficult, making sure that the American people know that what they're doing is wrong. It's going to affect American citizens in a very negative way. And it needs to be every day. It needs to be quick. None of this fucking, we'll put something together and convene on Thursday at 4 p.m. to tell you about why we think it's bad. At that point, your messaging is fucking lost. What they're doing has been forgotten about and moved on. And whatever that individual's opinion of that was, it cannot be swayed any longer. If you catch them within the first couple hours or within the first 12 hours, I would say, of this happening, you might be able to form some opinions or flip some opinions on the matter with undecided voters or people that don't have any, that aren't constantly plugged in and their decisions already made. But if you're waiting days at a time, their opinion of that, whatever it was when they first heard it, okay, Doge is cutting XYZ fund. Well, government is wasteful in spending. Maybe that's a good idea. That's stuck. That's done. You coming back on Thursday down the road and saying, oh well, it's gonna affect payment for these programs that help American citizens. It's gone. You lost it. That initial response is what's going to stick with them, and that's going to stay forever. We've got to be quick. We've got to be strong. We've got to be like AOC and Pete and Andy Kim and Chris Murphy and get our message out there and get it out firmly and quickly. Because if we're not capable of doing that, we're going to lose the messaging battle that we've already been losing. And this is, for me, I'm not seeing a way that it's getting better right now, right? And not to harbor on Ken Martin too much, because I do think he has good ideas, and maybe he's more of a behind the scenes worker and he can get this going a little better. I have my doubts on that, but I just don't feel like he was the correct decision. And David Hogg, for all his faults that I in particular have, and most of them aren't really all that bad. It's just I don't think he had a ton of experience to be in this position as it is, and it is more of a platform. It's more of a figurehead position. I'm not really sure he's he's driving the party forward or anything, but he does have strong and quick messaging. It's not always perfect, and that's okay, right? It's going to take some time to figure this out. It's going to take some time to get our messaging correct and better. But we've got to do that. We've got to let the people that are good at this out there and formulate the messaging and let other candidates sort of follow their lead. If you establish that Pete Buttigieg and AOC are your two best messengers in the party, let them talk and then let everybody else sort of fall in line behind that and keep it going and maybe reach their constituents in a way that AOC and Pete wouldn't. We've got to get our fight back. There's just no fucking chance that we're going to be winning elections if we don't get our fight back, right? It's done. We lost the messaging battle in 2024. If we keep going this way, we're going to lose it again in 2026. If we do not flip the House and or the Senate in 2026, we are absolutely fucked going forward. I cannot stress that enough, because that'll be just a sizable signal that Democrats did not learn anything and did not get it right. So on to a little bit of sports news here. We had the Super Bowl on Sunday. The Eagles defeated the Kansas City Chiefs in what turned out to be basically a blowout. I picked the Eagles to win. I thought it was going to be sort of the way that I think the Kansas City Chiefs thought it was going to go. I thought the Eagles were going to run the entire offense through Saquon Barkley. The Kansas City Chiefs shut down Saquon Barkley pretty well, but had no answer for really anything else that the Eagles wanted to do. And I think at one point the score was 34-0, and then at another point it was 40-6. Kansas City added some garbage time touchdowns late in the fourth quarter to take the ultimate scoreline to 40-22. But that's the second Super Bowl blowout that Patrick Mahomes has been on the losing side of, and nothing against Patrick Mahomes at all. Obviously, he's an extremely talented quarterback, very good quarterback, best in the NFL, has made it to 5 Super Bowls, which is unfucking believable by itself. Won 3 of them. I think there was a conversation that happened before among some people that, okay, if Patrick Mahomes wins 3 in a row, something Tom Brady never did, takes his total to 4, I think he's 28 or 29 years old, does he start approaching the status of Tom Brady? And I think this put a pretty significant dent in that conversation. Not that Tom Brady didn't lose any Super Bowls, of course he did. He lost 2 to the New York Giants and 1 to the Eagles, but he never got blown out. And yeah, you can argue that some of those Super Bowls, his defense bailed him out of some pretty bad performances. Both of those Giants Super Bowls could have been blowouts if the Giants had done literally any fucking thing on offense. One of the ones that he won, I think it was 13-3 against the Rams, put up 13 points. In the Super Bowl, you probably would expect to lose, but instead they won by double digits. But I do think this puts a dent in Patrick Mahomes's, not legacy. I don't want to say that because he's obviously already a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's won 3 Super Bowls, appeared in 5. He's got MVPs, Super Bowl MVPs. He's won everything there is to win in the league. But approaching that GOAT status, this definitely put a dent in it. Approaching Tom Brady's status, this is definitely, he would have, because I don't think he's going to have the longevity of Tom Brady's career. I don't think he wants to have the longevity of Tom Brady's career. But if he could have won this one this year and then maybe collected a few more in the next 5 years or 5 to 7 years, then, maybe there's a conversation to be had there. But this is definitely going to hurt it. But one of the big things that was talked about by Republicans was the Kendrick Lamar halftime show. And there was obviously, you probably could have guessed what the Republican response to that would have been if we had, basically just telling you who was going to perform beforehand. But Kendrick Lamar made it a point to make some political statements. He made some statements against Drake. He made some, some other statements that triggered Republicans pretty hard. And I don't think it was the Drake statements, but, he got accused of, he's a mumble rapper. I didn't understand a single word. And then the fuckers came out with their damn DEI halftime show comments. And obviously, I don't think this is the greater electorate in America making these comments. It's like Charlie Kirk and sons of bitches like that. But I mean, at this point, it is literally just a racial slur, and they need to just own it and say that's what it is. Kendrick Lamar is, in his genre of music, rap, he is very highly respected. I believe he's won the Pulitzer Prize. He has very thought-provoking lyrics. And, just say that you wanted a white person up there, because that's ultimately what it was. And the follow-up tweets on it, man, they were like, maybe we can have country music next year. Man, fuck off. Come on. I mean, this is ridiculous. Like, we have pop and all that bullshit every single year. Let something different come up. And that's really all country music is, right? Pop music with twang. But it's just, they don't know what the fucking word DEI is. They keep throwing it out there, and it works, man. Like, this just goes back to the messaging aspect of Democrats and Republicans. This shit just works. People see Kendrick Lamar, DEI halftime show, and they're going to go to work the next day and repeat it. They're going to post it on Twitter and Facebook and talk shit about it and all that. And if you didn't like the halftime show, you don't have to. If you don't like that kind of music, you don't have to. It's not really my type of music either, and that's totally fine. But I'm just willing to admit that it's a genre that I don't really care for, or I'm just fucking old, right? I'm just getting old, and that's what happens when you get old. Music passes you by, and that's one of the first indicators is you hear, your kid or some kids that in the neighborhood listening to music, and you're just like, what the fuck is that? And my parents went through the same shit with me. I listen to insane music. So it's just so fucking ridiculous that we're having this conversation, and then it got to this point. But that's how the world is now. That's how the Republican Party is now. And I don't see that really changing. And lastly, we'll talk about this real quick. It was an interview that Brett Baer, I believe, did with Donald Trump, and which he asked if Donald Trump viewed J.D. Vance as his successor, to which Donald Trump replied, no, flatly no. And he went on to basically say, do I think he's doing a very good job? Yes, of course. He's talked about there being other talented members in the party. I posted on X that I thought this was a symptom of maybe Trump just literally not giving a flying fuck what happens after he's gone. He doesn't have a successor because he didn't give a shit or hadn't thought about it. I don't know. Maybe he's making a case for one of his sons to run for president. Maybe he's making a case for Tucker Carlson to run for president or something like that. But we've all been sort of operating under this idea that J.D. Vance is sort of there in waiting for the Republican Party. I think that's what J.D. Vance thought too. I think that's why J.D. Vance took the VP role with Donald Trump, because he wanted to run for president. It's highly publicized and highly documented, all the shit that J.D. Vance said about Donald Trump over the years. And then there was a distinct flip, and things started to move back towards J.D. Vance being very pro-Trump, and ultimately led to him winning the GOP Veep stakes and being selected as VP on the ticket, or being selected as VP on the ticket. So it's interesting to hear Donald Trump say that. And it makes me, again, like I said, maybe it's a case of he doesn't give a fuck what happens next. Maybe it's a case of him wanting to select his son or Tucker Carlson or some other yes man or some shit like that. And it does make me wonder, perhaps Elon Musk's thumb is on the scale here. Maybe he's already setting the path in place for Elon Musk to select who will be the next GOP candidate. I don't think it would be Elon Musk himself. I think he prefers to operate sort of behind the scenes and in this sort of gray area where he feels like he doesn't have a lot of people to answer to. He doesn't really have to abide by the laws or by the decorum of the office that he holds. He can just sort of do his own thing. I don't know that that's really the case, but it's so hard to get a read on what's going on right now because, again, we were all operating under the assumption that J.D. Vance was going to be the next one in the party to take the mantle, but maybe he's not, because there's so many fucking yes men and unqualified people working behind the scenes who've not been in government before, trying to make decisions and serve their own self-interest, not serve the Republican Party's self-interest. And this has always been my thought process on Donald Trump. His internecine brand of politics is burn it all down unless I win, and then I'll keep you propped up for as long as I can, or until I've either lost or I'm no longer usable, and then I'll burn it down again. And I think that's what's going on here. So it will be interesting to see how that transpires between all the people working behind the scenes and J.D. Vance, who is Vice President of the United States and assumed he was possibly the 2028 GOP nominee in waiting. And that is our episode for today. We will be back in your feed again later this week, going over some other upcoming news. If you like what you heard, please like, follow, subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok as well. We are on X. We're on everything. So please like, subscribe, follow, whatever you do on that individual network, let us know. And if you've got any comments or anything, feedback or questions you'd like to ask, shout them out to us because we'd love to hear them. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.